In this video, we'll look at how we can set up different control systems where we can have this cube control another cube or another mesh through a series of different types of connections. So let me just create a polygon sphere, and we'll move the sphere over to here for now. So one of these connections that we can make is we can make a direct connection, a one-to-one connection between an attribute such as translate or rotate or scale to either translate, rotate, or scale of the sphere. So for instance, we could have the position in Y control the scale of the sphere with a one-to-one connection. In order to do this, we can go to Windows, General Editors, Connection Editor. The connection editor will open up and we can see what will be our output and what will be our input. So from here, meaning the output of this value will be input into this one. So I'll select my cube and say load it on the left. So the output of this will control, select my sphere, and input value here. So in this column here where we have cube 1, I'm going to go down and select my translate. So we select translate, and we're gonna click this little plus sign to drop it down so we can select translate Y, and then we're gonna have the position translate Y control on the sphere on the right side the scale in X, Y, and Z. So you notice that when I did that, the sphere disappeared because currently the position in Y of my cube is 0. So that means that the scale of the sphere is set to 0, and you can see the connections right there. So if I take my cube and I start raising it up in Y, we can see the sphere start to scale or scale in on itself, meaning flipping to the other side because now it's a negative value of scale. So now it's negative 1.191 because the position of the Y-axis here is negative 1.91. So this is a direct connection or a direct link between one object and another object. The issue here is that if we want to animate the scale of the sphere, it can no longer be animated by selecting the sphere and adding keyframes to it, because what would happen is you would be trying to set keyframes at a certain scale along with also having the cube try to control the sphere. Anytime you wanted to animate the scale of the sphere, you would animate the position of the cube. So you would set keyframes on the position of the cube, and that would animate the sphere. If we wanted to still have the ability to do this independently, what we could do before we made our direct connection is, or before we made our sphere, let's delete this one and just create a new one, create a new polysphere, is what we could do instead of just connecting it directly to the sphere is we could create a group. So with the sphere selected, if I do Control G, I create a group. Now we want to make sure that the pivot point of this group is located where we want the sphere to scale from. Currently it would scale from 0, 0, which is not what we want. We want it to be in the center of the sphere. So we want to go to Modify and Center Pivot. So that way the group's pivot is now centered at the sphere. So this way we can use the group to scale the sphere, and if we look at the sphere node, by selecting the sphere, there is no value on the scales of the sphere. It's still 1, 1, 1. So the group is actually controlling now the scale, as well as it can control position and rotation of the sphere. So what this means is that if we want to make this connection, we can go from the cube to the group. So make sure you select the group. You have to be in the hypergraph hierarchy or outliner. And then we would say load left, load right. On the right side, make sure that on the right side here, let's select the group. On the right side, it should say group 1. And on the left side, it says cube 1. So the cubes translate in Y is going to control the group 1 scale, X, Y, and Z. And since the sphere is a child of the group controls the sphere. However, you can see with the sphere selected, there's no connections directly on the sphere because the connections are on the group. So now if we move the cube, the sphere will move up and down because, once again, the connections are on here. So we can independently still kind of maybe make an offset and say this is really the size because we can scale the actual sphere, but still have, again, the group connecting to it. Now, another thing we can do if we don't want a direct one-to-one connection in here, so for instance, if we wanted to say if this cube moves up 1, this one would only scale 0.5, or maybe it would scale 2, so it's not a one-to-one value. If we wanted to do that, we wouldn't use the connection editor. Instead, what we could do is use something called set-driven keys. So if we go into our modes here and we go into animation mode, we can go to key, and all the way down here we have set-driven key, and we can see set, and that will open up this set-driven key window. We have a driver and we have a driven. So we would select our cube and we would say load driver. We would select our sphere, or the group of a sphere if we made a group. Well, let's just make it here. I'll make a group. Make sure we center the pivot of the group. So here we can say load driven. So the group will be the driven and the cube is the driver. So what we would say is, okay, if the translate Y is going to be connected to the scale. So we just click and drag to select. And we say key. So meaning when the cube's translate Y is at 0, the group 1 scale XYZ is at 1. So we can already see it's not a one-to-one connection, because one-to-one connection would make the scale 0. So therefore, if we move the cube up to, let's say, 3, the group 1 scale XYZ would be 5. And we make sure we hit key. Once again, if we select the cube and the cube goes down to, let's say, -3, group 1, make sure you click it here in the set-driven key window, group 1 XYZ is going to be -5, which means it would flip in on itself, where you can see here now the axes are upside down, and we would hit key. So the important thing here is that you're selecting in the set-driven key window, making the change to the actual driver, then selecting in the set-driven key window the driven, making the actual change in the driven, and hitting key. So that way the values hold the connections for those 3. So now if we get our cube and we start to bring it up and down, we can see that it is changing the scale, but it's not changing at a one-to-one, it's changing at whatever values we wanted it to be set at. So this is a little bit more kind of customization of how one object can affect another. And you can do multiple attributes. You could have the rotates also connected to translates and so forth and so on. You just have to make sure when you're using the set-driven key window, you keep track of what you're keying, because you have to key an initial position. Typically, it would be at a 0 or 1 value, and then you have to key a position positive, meaning if you're moving up, and then a position negative if you're moving down or rotating left, rotating right. So there's 3 values that you typically would key and set as your driven keys. So that's a quick look at some of the other ways in which you can have certain objects control other objects within Autodesk Maya for animation purposes. Thank you for watching.